Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Unspoken Truths of Digital Leadership, Living the Leadership Values, where our guests will talk about the unspoken truths of leadership, the dark side, and the learnings from dealing with conflict with integrity. And today I have a very, very special guest that I'm very grateful to have on. He's an entrepreneur and founder of RYSE, Jay Jackson.
Man, how are you doing there? I'm
Thank
happy
you,
to
Jay,
be here.
so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you having me, man. Phenomenal. I'm excited to be here.
So, Jay, for those that don't know who you are, because I did a bit of research about you, but who are you and how did RYSE come about?
Man, Jay Jackson, man. I like to say just a country boy, man, that's living in the big city. Um, from Originally from Orlando, Florida, born and raised in Orlando, Florida. I've been an entrepreneur for, oh man, I can't even remember. It's a number of years, man. I started my first venture in my late 20s. I started in real estate, man, and did well in real estate. Got part of the market when the market climbed and rose in 2001, 2002, in those years, and then the market crashed in 2006, and you had to kind of reinvent yourself, man. But I've been around for some time, and did several ventures before we got to Rise. So, um, just excited for the ride and the journey.
Prior to you starting in entrepreneurship, what did you do?
Oh man. So I actually had a government job, man. I was working for the government. Interesting story. I'll share a bit of a story with you to even understand how the entrepreneurial seed got planted in my head. And so I worked for around 18, 19 years old. I worked for a company called Airborne Express. And I don't know if your listeners, if they're familiar with Airborne Express or not, but if you're familiar with FedEx, or you're familiar with UPS, very similar company, delivery company. And so when I got hired on with this company, man, the first 2 weeks on the job, I'll tell you, actually, when I first got hired, they put me in an area that I was very unfamiliar with. So I grew up in, really kind of an underserved area. Grew up in what they would call the hood, and really urban area, and that was where I was comfortable at. That was my comfort zone. And so when they hired me and they put me on the side of town, they said, we want you to work the east side of Orlando. And the east side was kind of the more affluent. That's where the people that were much more affluent lived, and I was not familiar with that area. And so I said, well, if you put me in the area that I'm comfortable with, right, this west side where I'm familiar at, I promise I could do a much better job. And they said, well, either you work this side where we're putting you at the east side, or you find a new job. And so, needless to say, I found myself working the east side. And the interesting thing that happened was the first 2 weeks on the job, I had this poor attitude because I didn't get my way. I felt like I was out of my comfort zone, and I had a very poor attitude. And then about 2 weeks into the job, I pull up at this house. And usually, you deliver the package, leave it at the front door, and you run off. And I know we've all seen the delivery drivers running to their vehicle before the person answers the door. But this particular day, man, I pulled up at this house, and it was like the biggest house I had ever seen in my life. And I was like, I have to know, what this person does that, to live in a house like this. I've never seen, seen anything like this. And it was probably maybe 2,500, 3,000 square feet. So it wasn't a big, huge mansion, but for somebody that came from where I came from, this was fairly large. And so I went to the doorbell, rung the doorbell, and I'm standing there shaking, and it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and this gentleman answers the door in t-shirt and shorts, and I said, sir, my name is Jay, and I'm your new delivery driver, and I was just wondering, you have a beautiful home, and what do you do? And he says, I run a business from my home. And I said, you run a business from your home? What are you talking about? And I said, I've never heard anything like that. And so he talked to me about his company. He was in the IT industry. And I said, so you're trying to tell me you don't go to work every day, you don't wake up every day, dreading going to work, fighting this traffic that you hate, working with people that you hate working with, doing something that you don't like doing, right? And only to go through that process over and over again. And he said, no, I love what I do. And he brought me to his home and showed me what he did. And that was the day the entrepreneurial seed got planted in my head. And I said, I don't know what it will be. I don't know what I'll be doing, but one day I'm going to start a business from my home, right? And I'm still thinking small, but I'm like, I want to work from my home like that. And that was where the entrepreneurial seed got planted. And so from that point on, it began to be watered through every other opportunity until ultimately I did start my own real estate company out of my home and then ultimately into an office and everything. But that was the planting of the entrepreneurial seed.
And did you go through the route that most people entrepreneurs start through, which was like reading the books like Rich Dad Poor Dad and personal development? Or
I
was
tell
it
you,
just something you just went out and did for yourself without prior any education?
no, you know what? It was certainly reading, not maybe not those same books that you mentioned, but it was certainly, an educational process. I am a constant student. I'm always looking for ways to learn I'm just always trying to find ways. And so, it started off with motivational things. And then yes, I started planning this, we started reading Think and Grow Rich and really started understanding the importance of goal setting and having goals and setting goals and writing them down and having clear plans and paths to get there. And so I guess it was, as a matter of fact, I did read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and so yeah, that began to really water that entrepreneurial seed that began to be planted. And then I just found mentors, right? I found mentors who really guided me in the right direction and really provided some sound guidance for me prior to even starting my business.
And before you started all the business, what was it like for you growing up as a child?
Oh, what was it like growing up, man? It was I was always it's funny because I watched my father who tried to start, businesses. I do remember him having, kind of this entrepreneurial seed within him, but he never really had the capital to begin to scale the ideas that he had. And so, I just always saw him kind of struggling. And so he always struggled here and there. And so I just remember I didn't really see through him. Unfortunately, I didn't see that entrepreneurial path as something that would be something that I wanted to pursue because I just saw where it was such a struggle for him. I'll tell you one of the things about me that was very interesting when you talk about growing up. As I mentioned, where I grew up from and what the background that I came from. I really idolized the wrong crowd growing up. And so that was part of the things that I had to overcome because, we didn't have a lot growing up. And so, you put value in material things. And so, you see the people with material things and where I came from, they weren't doing the right things. And so that's what you equated success to was those material things. And then thankfully, as I began to get older, you begin to understand really what success is about and what that journey is about is really so much more than obtaining material things, but what you begin to give and how you begin to serve. And that's when I began to develop this servant spirit and understand that it's really about how can you take your talent and take your skills and use them to serve others. And so I learned that valuable lesson.
And before you started to serve other people and help other people, what kind of value did you have? How did that value come about for you?
How did the value of
Serving and being compassionate and having that desire to help others.
That was when I began to be the most fulfilled, right? So I always worked. I always had at the age of 15, I had a job. And so I always worked and made money. And I was always a hard worker, and I remember when I was in school, while everybody was doing the school things, and I look back and I probably should have participated more in the extracurricular activities from school, but I was working, right? And so, I was driven always been just this hard worker. And you begin to realize, man, that there's a greater purpose. And you know, they always say, you know, really where your gift lies and where you know where your purpose lies is when you find the things that you get mad at, right? What is it that you get mad at? What is it that you get frustrated with? And one of the things that I would get frustrated with is just people, especially when I met after I met this gentleman. I would get, you know, frustrated when I would meet people who weren't satisfied with the way they were living, the way life was going for them, yet they wouldn't do anything about it. And you know, whether it be in their career, whether it be in their personal life. And so, you know, you know, I've always had this goal, not always, but this is where that entrepreneurial seed began to be birthed, is having this goal to help people manifest their greatest goals and their greatest dreams. And my first business venture, which was in real estate, was you know, just an extension of that. You know, I was helping people purchase a home, and it was a positive experience. And to take them and say, hey, listen, you can leave this apartment, or you can leave this kind of environment that you're coming from, and have a piece of ownership for something that's going to change the trajectory of your family. And that's when I began to learn and engage in or understand the value of serving. And so every venture that I had beyond that has always been finding a way to serve people in a positive way. So I guess you can say I believe in servant leadership. Absolutely.
And how have you been growing your servant leadership style? Because I'm very intrigued, because that's a style that I feel I've been working towards as well.
Really?
Is I get fulfilled by helping others and just
Yes.
being able to help someone out, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I have that buzz and that
Yeah.
drive.
You know, I'll tell you. So what wound up happening is when, you know, I talked about my real estate company, and so I did very well in real estate, and I'm thankful for that. And then the market crashed, and you kind of begin to have to reinvent yourself. And one of the things, because of some of these, you know, these backgrounds, the background that I'm telling you that I came from, and as a result of the success that I had as an entrepreneur, I won, you know, several awards. I would always be featured, you know, and asked to speak on entrepreneurship as a result. And I would speak to a lot of youth groups, and I would speak to even business organizations on entrepreneurship. And when I would speak to the youth groups, you know, a lot of times I'm speaking to groups like the Boys and Girls Club, or, you know, just a number of different youth organizations, and they would come up to me after the fact, and especially the youth, the diverse youth, the youth of color would come up to me, and they would see that I had a little less gray on my chin and a little less, you know, in the middle here. So they would really relate to me because they saw me as this young person that wasn't too far removed from where they were. And they would say, you know, we see athletes, right? And we see the entertainers, but we don't see entrepreneurs like yourself, people that are starting their own business. And, you know, I said, you know, what are you talking about, man? There's a lot of people out here just doing phenomenal things and following their passion and doing well at it. And they said, well, we don't see them. And so that was actually the seed that began to birth and take me on the journey of RYSE, which is the company that you mentioned, and what, you know, what the company that we have, and we launched in 2011. And RYSE is spelled RYSE, and it stands for recognizing the young, successful, and empowered. And really, what I wanted to do was I wanted to begin to tell those dynamic stories of individuals that, like I like to call, the silent giants, right? The people who come up with an idea, take an idea and birth it into something, and not even necessarily as an entrepreneur, but, you know, even in a corporate environment, if you're striving to be, you know, climb that corporate ladder, and you're finding ways to be innovative within a corporation, right? And I wanted to begin to tell those stories, and that is how we birth RYSE. And so again, you know, we started that company back in 2011, and so we're almost, next year be 10 years in, man. And it's
Congratulations.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And it's always been about how do we tell these dynamic stories, for the people who deserve to have those stories told. And we tell you, the purpose of telling those stories is to inspire the people that are following in that path or following behind, to give them an example, that they can say, okay, well, if they can do it, then I know I can do it. And I can potentially connect with them and maybe get some insight from them that could help me on my journey.
How did your vision for RYSE come about?
How did that vision come about? As I mentioned, it was when I was speaking to these youth groups, and I said, I want to find a way to tell those stories. And I remember I was leaving out of I forget where I was at. I was at an event, and I was leaving out of the event. It's very low key. And this young guy stopped me. He's like, Mr. Jackson. And I was like, I started talking to him, and he said he had read about me in some magazine that he had picked up. And I don't even remember the magazine, but he read about me. And so I was like, okay, well, wow, that's great. And he said, man, I saw you, and he recognized me when he saw me, and he said, I just had to talk to you. And so that night, man, and I had already been thinking about with these group youth that were the things that they were saying to me. And so that night I went to sleep, and I was like, man, I want to do something. And that seed, when he shared with me how he read about me in that magazine, I said, you know what? I woke up in the middle of the night, honestly, and RYSE hit my head, and it wasn't the regular spelling, it was the RYSE. And right away, I thought of the recognizing the young, successful, and empowered. And so that's how the idea came about. It was literally in my sleep. I woke up, and I began working on it, man. And 2.5 months later, interestingly, man, I'll share something with you too. I'll share this with your audience. I didn't know. I had never produced a magazine a day in my life. I didn't know anything about magazine publishing or anything like that. But I knew what the impact that I wanted to have for the target audience that I was going after. And so the next day I woke up and I went down to Barnes and Nobles, and I was looking at all the different magazines, and I was like, listen, I like this, I like that, I like this. I want to incorporate all of these various different, components into what I want to have, what I want RYSE magazine to be. And there was one, at the time I was in Orlando, Florida, and there was one magazine. It was called Orlando Magazine. And that was kind of the blueprint magazine that I liked in terms of the look of it and the feel of it. And I said, man, this is going to be our blueprint, but we're going to target, this upwardly mobile minority young professional demographic. And so I began working on the whole project that week. So that was a Sunday when I met the young guy. I'm working on the project all that week, working on, what this thing will look like. That very Saturday, following, I was doing a presentation for this national MBA organization, National Black MBA, and they wanted me to speak on entrepreneurship. Interestingly, and when I went around and I said, I want to know who's in the room, and I had everybody stand up and introduce themselves. And one of the people that stood up, his name was Jason Jones, and he says, my name is Jason Jones, and I'm the creative director for Orlando Magazine. Right. So the very same magazine that I said I wanted to use as my blueprint, the creative director, the one who was responsible for the look and feel of the magazine, was in the room that I was speaking on, and he was listening to my presentation about entrepreneurship. And then also in the room was a young lady who was an editor, or had been an editor for USA Today. And so they're coming to listen to me. And now that I find out who I have in the room, I'm like, listen, I got to talk with you all afterwards. And so my point to all of that story was just to say, sometimes you may not have all of the pieces of the puzzle, right? You may not have it all, but you can't let that stop you from starting. So many times people, they say, well, I don't have this and I don't have that. And so they don't want to start until they feel like they have it all together. And I didn't have it all together at all. I just, I had a vision. I began working with the pieces that I had, and then the other pieces began to come together. And 2.5 months from the day that I was birthed, the vision for RYSE, we published our very first magazine. We did a big launch event. The Orlando Magic, which is the local basketball team there, national basketball team, should I say, they were a sponsor of the event, and it was just a phenomenal thing. And that was the birth of what we've been working on for the past 10 years.
Wow. Just
I
from
didn't.
one idea and one vision.
And it has evolved. It has certainly evolved over the years. I mean, the magazine itself, I mean, we never sought to believe it or not, that was not the real business model for us. It was, the magazine was what I like to call a glorified business card. But for us, it was a nice glossy print publication. But for us, where we really would generate our revenue from is we would host events along with the magazine. So every time we unveiled a new magazine, we would do the RYSE Awards or the Women on the Rise Honors, or we would do some event, and those events would pull out 500 or 600 people a pop. And as a result, we began to have companies like Pepsi and State Farm and BB&T Bank and a lot of these corporate brands said, "Hey, we want to get in front of this upwardly mobile young professionals that you're curating into the room here." And so that was really the business model for us, was getting the corporations to sponsor and pay for all of these activities that we were doing, and so we would give the magazine away for free, but really generate our revenue from there. And it evolved into us morphing into a marketing agency. And so we began to do marketing campaigns. Since we understood the key demographic, we began to do marketing campaigns for these companies that would pay us to help them better understand how to authentically market to these upwardly mobile minority young professionals.
I'm just fascinated about this. When you decided to, was there a reason, a specific target age group that you was helping and you wanted to empower?
No, I'll be honest. There was never. I mean, we put an age demographic on it, but there was never an age demographic. I mean, if somebody is in high school or middle school and they have a dream or they have a goal, then I mean, then that's who we really want to have an impact on. If somebody is older and they've retired and they say, well, you know what, I want to jump back out there. I got something that I'm passionate about that I want to jump back out there with. I want to inspire them as well. And so it was never really an age demographic. We used recognizing the young, successful, and empowered. But I always believe, man, young is a state of mind. So it never really mattered to us what age or it was really about, do you want to, what is the goal, what is the dream that you have, and how can we inspire you, and then not only inspire you but then provide you with resources to help you get there. And so that's really what the core was for us, is more about impacting people who we felt we who felt we needed, or they needed that push or that guidance or that resource. So
you're giving them a platform to find their voice.
Exactly. And when you talk about platform and the evolution of where we've evolved to now, man, is really exciting for us. So
it's been phenomenal with the change and with what we can do, especially across, especially like now, you're across the pond and we're having this conversation.
Absolutely.
Like 10 years ago, this probably wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, and technology, man, has really changed, and the digital world has really changed things. And so as a result, man, we moved the company to Atlanta, to Georgia, Atlanta in 2015, because we just wanted to go into a much larger market. And that became an opportunity as well, because when we moved the company here, right, the Georgia market, there's a lot of film and entertainment and production that takes place here. It's a multi-billion-dollar market when it comes to the film and entertainment and just that whole digital world, or that whole content creation world. And so as a result, man, I said, listen, we're working with a lot of these, because we were working with organizations or brands and developing content and working with them to develop authentic content. I work with a lot of freelancers. So again, these are the creatives. These are the people that have goals and dreams, and they're the ones that I always say add color to a world that would otherwise be black and white, because they're adding that creative spirit to it. We began working on the project and the evolution of our company RYSE into a project that we call RYSE Creative Village. And that's where we are right now. It's really exciting. We recently purchased a former Atlanta public school property. So we purchased this former school that's about 31,000 square feet. It sits on about 4 acres of land, and we are going through a multi-million-dollar redevelopment of this school and converting it into this content production studio and incubator for creatives who operate in the film, music, and digital media world. And so, again, this is about taking these people that have a goal, that have dreams, and that, and helping them, and now having a facility that has the resources to help them manifest those goals and dreams. And so within this facility, we're going to, there's production sound stages, there's podcasting studios, as we're sitting on a podcast right now, there's photography studios, there's virtual reality gaming studios. And so you have all of these acoustically engineered production spaces to create content out of, but it's all wrapped around this co-working community. And so now, if I'm a screenwriter, I can connect with a cinematographer, I can connect with a sound engineer, and now I can be a part of a community that of people that can help me bring these ideas and these concepts to fruition in reality.
Is it like a mix of a Netflix and Google incubator?
Yeah, you can say that. I mean, I never looked at it like that, but absolutely, it's about bringing all of this creative talent together. And I'll tell you what the goal is for us is, as we say, we're curating and cultivating creativity, right? So we're curating all of these creatives under one roof and providing them with resources that can help them develop their talent. And then on the flip side of that is, we are working with studios, major studios here. So much, studios that productions like Marvel are getting produced in. So we're working with those studios to help these creatives now get connected to real opportunities in major productions. And so that is what this is all about, man. So it's about helping to create those opportunities. So we want you to come in, we want to help you develop that talent, we want to give you the resources that you need to produce and hone that talent, and then we want to get you connected to some significant opportunities in the industry.
So you're empowering the next generation of creatives.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow,
It
that is powerful.
I'm glad you see it, man. It's been a major undertaking. It took us a little bit over 2 years to be able to buy this school from Atlanta Public Schools. It was not an easy process. Working, with the school system, they're just not designed to be, selling real estate and moving things like that. But we made it through the process with them, and so now we're in that development process with a planned opening, soft opening in fall of 2021. So you're catching us as we're working on the design and going through the fun part of designing what the space will look like.
And for you, as a seasoned entrepreneur, I would say,
Mhm.
because you've been in the game for much longer, just because you've been in the game for much longer, how has it been for you to manage your emotions and tensions and stress, and what keeps you driven every day?
I always say you got to find a why, right? You got to find a why that keeps you driven. And so the why is what kept me driven. It is, when I think about the why, I think about so many talented people that are, just as talented as the people that are creating the content that we turn on Netflix and watch, but they're never given an opportunity, right? They don't have the right connection. They don't understand how to even get plugged into opportunities. So that was my why. I will say that was my why. So even when the process was drawn out, with the acquisition and just throughout the whole thing, when it got very difficult, I always stayed rooted to why I was doing this, and that's why I stayed committed to it. In terms of the emotions, I tell you, the journey can be long and difficult. It can be daunting. It can be lonely at times, right? Because not everybody understands the things that you may be going through. Nobody, a lot of times people don't understand the commitment. They don't understand the sacrifice. They don't understand those various different things. And so you have to kind of stay rooted, and you have to find ways, there's things that I do spiritually that help me stay rooted. There's I do have to wind up making sure I take a break and have some type of balance, throughout the journey, because it can be very, very difficult at times. And, so those are some of the things that I would do.
What kind of spiritual practices do you do?
Well, I'm a Christian, and and so really my faith, and I certainly pray. I certainly find ways to serve, and again, it's going back to serving. I find ways to serve others who are less fortunate, and that always keeps you balanced. That keeps you balanced, because if you're just focused on money, you're focused on profitability and those type of things all the time, then you lose sight, right? Because it's got to be about more than that. And so I focus on my spirituality. I pray a lot, and then I use the serving others, and to help just add that balance to me. And that's one of the things that just has always helped me. And so I have a passion for it, man. If it was up to me, man, I'd give my shirt, and give my last to kind of help others, if I feel like they really are in need. And the thing about it, man, is that I always find that I go that it always works out for me in the end, no matter how difficult it is. When I'm giving and I'm serving, in the end, it always comes back to me tenfold. And so I don't do it for that, but they always say, man, go givers will always go further than go getters, right? And so learn understanding being a go giver, and you'll find that it comes back to you tenfold.
And in our terms, or in the Asian culture, we call it good karma. Is that something you believe in?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I certainly believe in that. I was listening to Oprah Winfrey, and she talked about the power of karma, and how you have the power to control your destiny, and what are you putting out there, right? Because it's going to come back to you. And so you have to put good out there, because if you're putting good out there, then good is going to come back. And I'm thankful that it's just always in a positive way has come back on me. And so I'm thankful for that. And I think that's what has helped me navigate and get to where, accomplish things that, are far beyond and far greater than I would have even imagined accomplishing for myself.
Have you always been a positive person?
Am I positive, man? Am I positive?
I love the energy and the vibe that you give. It's just so contagious, and it gets me buzzed. And so when I feel that energy, I'm someone that feels energy quite sensitively.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I'm just like vibing in good spirits right now. So something is coming across from you, obviously.
No, I believe, I wholeheartedly believe in energy. It's funny because I am an energy filler, so I totally understand what you're saying, and I guess I do, man. I guess I try to stay positive, and I will say, man, I will get away from people that bring negative energy, because I know that it can have an effect, man, and I believe in that. And so I'm just always positive. I'm always like, man, if I keep pushing, if I keep doing right, if I keep trying to do the right thing and keep trying to serve, it's going to ultimately come back positively to me. And so yeah, sometimes I guess I might be overly optimistic at times, but as some people tell me. But yes, I try to always be positive, and I'm thankful, and I can't help but be positive because of where I am in life, and I'm certainly thankful for where I have gotten, and I can't help but be positive. I can't be negative for the things that I've been blessed with, because I know there's people with so much less, so much. So,
but how do you stay so grounded?
how do I stay grounded?
Yeah. Because I say this because with utmost respect to others, but there are some people who have made a lot of success, but their behaviors and attitude says otherwise. Like you do get some people who just not as polite, or not as positive, or just doesn't really help out others and things like that. So I'm not just disrespecting them, but some people just get to that point where they have it or get that success, and
I guess because I'm always trying to bite off more than something bigger than probably I should be doing. And so as a result, I'm always envisioning something bigger and greater than most people would imagine for myself. And as a result, you have that period where let me back up a little bit. There's a song that says all I do is win, 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 no matter what. And the thing about it is that's not reality, right? And reality is, sometimes you win, then you lose, and then you win, and then you lose. But as long as you're out there playing, I mean, you're gonna continue to progress. And so it for me, I don't always win. And so it's those losses that keep me humble, right? It's the times that, okay, that didn't work out as planned, right? And so that brings you back to being humble, right? And it doesn't, and it makes you appreciate the wins that much more, right? So, okay, man, that didn't work out like I wanted it to work out. That took a little bit longer than I anticipated. And so, man, I'm thankful for when I do win. And that's what has for me has always kept me humbled, is because the journey hasn't always been easy. And so when it's not easy, and then you begin to just appreciate when you have those successes. And so I'm thankful that I have kept that humble spirit, and I also realize it's bigger than me, man. It's never about me. It's about it's about the team that I have working around me. It's about the impact of the people that we're having. And so I just thankful. I guess it's coming from those humble beginnings, man, that make me just appreciate where I am and appreciate people around me. And I hope I never lose it, man.
Well, it came across at the beginning when I asked you about your title, and you just said just Jay Jackson. Like you didn't even want a. It sounded like you didn't even want a title.
Man, it's so funny because I worked with a number of different organizations, and I remember I was working with this one organization. They pulled together community leaders for this nonprofit organization. They wanted us to help them raise money, and so they would go around the room and ask people, or have people introduce themselves. And it's funny because the people who probably had the least or had accomplished the least amount, they would give these grandiose introductions about themselves and have these elaborate titles for these companies that really it was just one man operation or whatever, and nothing, not knocking them at all. But I had a mentor who was in the same room with me, and this gentleman, he owned probably 8 or 9 McDonald's at the time, eight or nine McDonald's restaurants. Very, very successful, very, very well off financially, hugely successful. And when he introduced himself, he's like, "My name is such and such, and I work with McDonald's." And that was just it. Like he was like, "My name is such and such, and I work with McDonald's." And people were like, "McDonald's? Oh, what is he? Is he manager at McDonald's?" And people got but he was probably had the highest net worth of anybody in the room. And I just admired that about him. He didn't have to come in here. I own 8 McDonald's restaurants, and that generate X number of dollars a month. And everybody who probably were I don't want to say anybody's nothing, but the people who were creating all of this, these self-fulfilled titles or whatever, they were just mere fraction of where he was. And so from that, I said, man, gee, that's how I would like to be, is that person where man, it's not about any of that. You know what I mean? It's about the impact.
Wow, that's amazing. How did the impact? What caused you to want to create an impact?
Um, Really, just where I come from. So it's like back at from the beginning. It's really just where I came from. I just um came from those very humble beginnings. And then also I think about, I'll add this in, and I haven't talked about this a lot, but I think about my own children. I mean, and really it even goes back to my father. So I talked a little bit about my father earlier, and I talked about how on his entrepreneurial journey, he didn't have a lot of the resources and he didn't have the internet. So he wasn't able to connect with people like yourself, from far and wide. And so he just was really trying to figure it out with the resources that he had access to. And so when I think about my own journey, I have a sense of purpose that I want to be able to carry that baton where he couldn't get that baton, or he could only carry it so far. And so I'm thankful for where I am because of resources and things that I've been allotted in my generation. I'm able to carry that baton a little bit further. And then I also have two children of my own, a son and a daughter who I think about for the future. And so I think, okay, well, I got to be able to carry it much further than my father could, so that when I pass it to them, they're not starting, close to the close to the start, but they're starting closer to, I won't even say the finish line because you're continuously running, but they're starting a lot further and they are able to get a lot further than even I can. And so, while it's, serving others, I also think about, I'm at that age now. You see the gray, so I'm at that age where I think about legacy, and I think about, how our family and our family trajectory can change um, for the next generations. They always say a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children, and so um, I think about stuff like that.
That's awesome because you're making a massive difference in the world, and I can see it just from just listening from the vision that you have and what you're creating with the village.
Mm, mm,
Like,
yeah.
and I pass by, I definitely need to drop by the village.
Yeah, you definitely, man. It's going to be phenomenal. I mean, it's really going to be this place where I talked about the school itself and what we're doing within the school, but it sits on 4 acres of land, and we're actually building, a multi-family apartment complex on site as well. And ultimately, and that's when we that's why we call it a village, because it's really this live, work, play type of environment. So you can live there. You live in one of the apartments, and then if you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you want to create something, right? You can just go over to the main building, and get access to it, because you got 24-hour access, and then begin to create. And right. And so and I just think about that, and I'm excited for where it's going. And we really just want to be this hub for developing that talent, and then helping them get connected to opportunities and goals, so that we can help them manifest their goals and their dreams. And man, we can continue to add color to this world, man. Every time we turn on the TV, somebody thought about that, right? Somebody thought about the shows that we're watching. When we turn on the radio and listen to music, or whether you listen to whether you listen to the Apple Music, or whatever, however you get your music, stream it. Somebody created that, right? Somebody had to write the lyrics, somebody had to produce the beat and all of that. And to me, that I just find that fascinating. And I don't think we spend enough time really appreciating that creativity. We live in this world where everything is so corporate driven and money driven, and we don't understand. It's always, well, how does that make money? What's the ROI on that? And man, the ROI is that, man, you feel good, man. When we're going through all this stress and we're stuck at home, and you can't get out because of COVID, man, we're watching TV. We got to get out of this world. When the economy crashes and people are just hurting financially, right? They want to escape this world, and they want to escape it with something that is birthed from someone's imagination. And I just find that fascinating, and I'm just intrigued with that. And I'm always wanting to help people who have that within them, and helping them manifest it. So
That's just beautiful because we see the whole thing with like the YouTube community, the content creators, they're all creators, they're all
absolutely.
creatives.
Mm-hmm.
The Twitch streamers, the gamers,
Absolutely.
they're all creating content of their own,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think they're valued by the society as much.
No.
Even despite how much money the YouTube creators can be making,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they took like what 15 years of building that
Absolutely.
to get where they are, right? So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even in the corporate world, I mean, they don't value that, right? So the corporate world likes to siphon that culture and that, they like to siphon that culture and that creativity. But then, when it comes down to, okay, well, you need to write a check for that, right? And you need to pay for that, and you need to really value that. It's like, well, what is the ROI? Now, I want it because I know it's cool. It has the cool factor, but what is the ROI? And so they don't understand and they don't value it the same way. And so, and that's why you have these tech companies that they have this culture. They understand and embrace that culture, right? And these tech companies get it, but the traditional corporate brands, they haven't always gotten it. And so,
And what has leadership meant to you?
leadership to me, leadership has meant responsibility, and I'll take it all the way back again. It's about responsibility to serve others. That is what leadership means to me. It's about, hey, here's the vision that we have and how the impact that we are going to have, and now how do we accomplish that? You all need to understand the vision of where we're trying to go, and you need to understand what we're trying to accomplish, and then how do we get there. There's a quote, man, that I love, and it says, if you want to build a ship, right? If you want to build a ship, you don't gather people around and assign them tasks and duties, right? You teach them to long for the sea, right? You teach them to say, hey, listen, this is what it's going to feel like when we get out on the ocean and the waves are crashing and it's blowing against your face and you can feel the wind, right? And getting people to be inspired and say, you know what, I want to be a part. And now I want to be a part of helping because I want to get out in the ocean. I want to feel what you're telling me, and what you've envisioned and what you painted this picture for me. And so now I'm ready to give my all, in terms of building this ship, and I'm ready to whatever talent I have, I want to lend it to that. And so that's when I think about leadership. I think about that quote. That's what I always equate it to.
And how have you been managing your own team in terms of leadership? Has it been tricky or different generations? And
it spans, and really what it boils down to is, man, just um trying, and sometimes it can be difficult, but just really trying to understand that, man, these people are so much. Let me go back a little bit. I believe in surrounding yourself with people who are much smarter in areas that you're weak in, right? And I believe that, I have a greater vision, but at the same time, man, I'm very weak in certain areas, and I know what the areas that I'm strong in. And so as a result, I really try to surround myself with people who are much stronger in those areas that I'm weak in. Then I try to give them the tools and the resources and the freedom to be able to just do what they do, right? You don't hire A+ players and then tell them what to do. You hire A+ players and say, hey, this is what we want to accomplish. How do we do it? And so that's what I'm always trying to do. I'm always trying to find those A+ players who are committed to being at the top of the game and what they do, and then taking that talent and doing something impactful with it. And so, yeah.
yeah, because I see a lot of corporations, they hire in these big guns, but they never listen to them.
Yeah.
They micromanage them, and they go, no,
Hmm.
this is what we think, and this is what you got to do. It's like, well,
Hmm.
why did you hire me then?
Yeah, exactly. No, 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 not at all, man. I'm like, hey, listen, you all, here's where we're trying to go. And this is what I do all the time. I'm like, hey, this is what I envision on the big picture. And how the hell do we get there? Right? How the hell do we get there? And give me some insight. Let's talk about this. Let's throw a bunch of stuff up against the wall and have some group thinking and figure out how do we get there. And I'm always open. I'm not a, again, I guess that goes back to the humbleness. I'm not, hey, I know it all, so we got to do it this way. It's how do we get there, and empower them, and you'd be surprised, man, what people come up with. You're like, man, I hadn't even thought about that, right? And they take it, to a whole other level. We were having a team meeting today, and I had this big picture for something, and then somebody chimed in and say, well, Jay, that's great, but that's really small what you're thinking, right? Because we need to look at it like this, and this could be, this. And I'm like, oh wow, okay, I hadn't thought about that, man. Okay, well, I guess I was thinking small. And so if we can multiply that, and have an even greater impact, then man, I'm all for it. And so,
Fascinating.
and and
Fascinating.
and and just always, I'm always a student, man. I believe, and I mentioned this earlier, man. I am always trying to learn and then take what I learn and then share it with others. And so, yeah.
And just the last one is for the aspiring entrepreneurs or the entrepreneurs that's out there listening to this, what advice or suggestions can you give them?
What can I give them, man? It's so many things. It's so many things. Um, the main thing, probably one of the main things is, well, there's two things I will say. Um, one of the first things I will say is, stop worrying about and giving a damn what other people think, man. Just, stop caring about what other people think. You got to do you, and if you just focus on what you love and you focus on, having impact, and if the target who you're going after is you believe is small, that's fine. Just serve and super serve, um, who you believe in, and you will ultimately find your path. I do believe that. I mean, I've always, just said, man, you know what? This is what I like. This is what I love. This is the impact that I want to have. This is what I believe in. And then everybody else just that came along, man, they just believed in the same thing, and we moved along. And so, I didn't care what people think, and whether they laughed or whether they didn't get it. I knew that the right people, would come along that would help me get to the next stage of everything and anything that I was doing. And so that would be the first piece of advice. The last piece of advice I would say is, you may not have it all together, man. You may not have it all together. And I mentioned this earlier. Please do not let that stop you from getting started, man, because, where we are right now, man, and how far we've gotten, I couldn't have even fathomed this back in May of 2010 or 2011 when I started, this company. I would have never even fathomed getting this far. And even when we started working on this project, I would bring people to this building that we purchased. But before we had purchased it, it's a, as I mentioned, it's a former school, and it's been vacant for 16 years. So you can
Wow.
imagine what a building looks like. It's solid block, so I mean, it's not going anywhere. But you can imagine what a building that's been sitting vacant and dormant, looks like. For 16 years, it's broken. All the windows are broken out, and all this trash, and all of this is just around the building. And I would bring people to the building, and they would say, man, this is a big, huge building. This is a big undertaking, man. Jay, you gotta be, you sure you want to do this, man? This is. They would be scared, right? And I'm sitting there looking at it like with starry eyes, like I got the starry eye emoji right in my eyes. I'm like, man, what are you talking about? And I didn't even see the broken out windows. I didn't see any of that. And they were like, man, this is just, this is going to take years. And I didn't think about how long it would take. I thought about the impact. I'm like, man, I see the cars pulling in and out of the parking lot, right? I see the people walking in and out. And when I'm walking in the building, I can see people in the production studio working on things, and I could see the traffic flowing through. And so I didn't care how many years it took. And I knew that it would take a lot. And I mean, it's a multi-million-dollar undertaking. And people say, well, where are you going to get the money? This thing is going to, cost millions of dollars to fix it. But I'm like, we'll figure that part out, right? We will figure, and we figured it out, right? And we figured it out. And so that's what I say to people is, you may not have all of the pieces, but you got to get started. You got to start with what you got. And I promise you, it will begin to come together. And so those are my pieces of advice.
Wow. Thank you so much, Jay, for your wisdom and your time. Appreciate your energy and everything that you shared during this podcast. It certainly inspired me to keep going and keep following whatever path that I'm deciding to choose
Man.
to go to.
I hope so, man. I hope I didn't bore your audience to death, man.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely, man. Well, I appreciate you having me. I'm thankful.
Thank you. Stay blessed. Thank you so much, Jay.
All right. And also for your listener, I will share this last thing is that they can visit and learn more about the project at, not Rise Connect, I'm sorry, at RYSE.com. And so RYSE, creativevillage.com. And they can certainly learn more about the project and what we're doing, man. And so again, thank you.
Is there any other places they can find your other businesses and other magazines and stuff that you have?
Well, everything that we do is all incorporated in Rise Creative Village now. So if they go to Rise Creative Village, they can connect with all of our media platforms and things like that, and they can certainly learn more about everything that we're doing.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much.
All right. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.